Good morning, River Chase. It has been a very, very busy week here. Yesterday was our last day of virtual Vacation Bible School. It was the first time I've ever conducted a homeschool group. It was a huge undertaking, a blessing. It requires so much planning, communicating, organization. And I had help from so many people in our church again this year. It is always a blessing to work together with the goal of teaching our kids about the love of Christ. This year, I was uncomfortable and maybe a little overwhelmed by the week. It seems like each year something happens as a spiritual attack to distract me from these important opportunities to reach children. This year was no different. On Sunday, Father's Day, and the day before Vacation Bible School started, our hot water heater stopped working. Each day of this week had a new challenge, including yesterday when Maggie started feeling sick. I have been determined to get this devotional out to you, and I'm sorry it's a day late, but it's so important to keep pushing forward in the face of adversity. Being uncomfortable is a great place to grow. I've been studying more about the Exodus, and this week my mind was just blown at something I discovered about Moses' own discomfort. So what is discomfort? What is comfort? Is comfort money in the bank and a warm home? Is it success and good relationships? And is comfort always good for us? We've discussed Moses' childhood and early adulthood, his wife Zipporah, and his new life as a husband, father, and shepherd. God called him from the burning bush, and after Moses finally relented to God's request, Moses set out to Egypt to meet with Pharaoh. He met with Pharaoh to discuss the release of God's people, the Israelites, from slavery. After negotiations failed, the plagues began. I've read that the plagues could have been directed at disproving the Egyptian gods one by one. And surely, because of the way Moses was raised in the royal Egyptian family, he would have been familiar with what these gods represented. In the Song of Moses from Exodus 15 and verse 11, Moses says, "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing wonders?" It goes on in verse 12 and 13 to declare the wonderful ways they were rescued, purchased, redeemed. Moses acknowledges the weakness of Egypt's gods and bows in awe at God's power. Now, I know we are all looking forward to the return of college football. And hopefully we are healthy enough as a country to pull off a season this year. So imagine a football game at Bryant-Denny Stadium. It's a big game against Auburn, and every seat is filled. That particular stadium, Bryant-Denny Stadium, fits about 101,800 people. And we know that that is a loud amount of people, and a lot of people, over 100,000 people. And now I want you to imagine being in charge of an emergency evacuation. Every seat has a man in it, and he's attempting to escape danger. Let me read Exodus 12:37. And the people of Israel journeyed from Rameses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. A mixed multitude also went up with them, with much livestock, both flocks and herds. Okay, so 600,000 men. not including the women, children, and animals. So imagine again a filled Bryant-Denny Stadium times 6, and that's just the men. 6 stadium filled with men, and you're in charge. And when you add the women and children, maybe 3 to 6 more stadiums filled. And Moses was to organize these people and animals, herds and their flocks, to travel through the wilderness as one on foot. Earlier this week, I was looking through old pictures and found a picture of an old picture of a Christmas cactus cutting that we were given 7 years ago before we moved to Alabama. This same cutting is now in need of pruning. It started off tiny and very weak, but now it is thriving. I started reflecting how God has grown us over the last few years. It has not always been comfortable, and distractions like roadblocks appear before us often. I've noticed that the more we strive to serve God and the church, the more roadblocks appear. We were transplanted to Alabama just like the Christmas cactus into a new pot with more room to grow. But growth is painful. It was not an easy move for us. Maggie even came down with the chicken pox a week before the moving truck arrived. And since I've been studying Moses lately, the Israelites have been on my mind. When I think of their move through the wilderness and the 40 years it took to enter their land, I can't help but wonder at the uncomfortable miracle they experienced. And maybe I've been too harsh when I read about their grumblings. I think I probably would have been grumbling myself. How many times have I complained about a blessing? God sent manna, a miracle food source, and the Israelites complained that they missed eating meat. They wished they were back in Egypt. How many times have I told God his miracles weren't good enough for me? My home is small, but it is a safe place. My family isn't perfect, but they are mine, and I love them. My bank account is meager, but we have food, utilities, and nice things. I hope I am better at being thankful today and tomorrow. And can you imagine the pressure on Moses? Setting up camps, the complaints, the need for food and clean water. Moses was a leader to about 1.2 million people. Can you imagine hearing complaints from 1.2 million people who are hungry and thirsty, mentally unable to accept freedom? They still had that slavery mindset, and they were probably malnourished to begin with. After the hardness of Pharaoh, who worked them so hard, their health probably wasn't the best. So can you imagine being in charge of that many needy people? And don't forget, these people were also lacking faith. Only God could set in motion this escape and equip a man like Moses. I love Moses. This was a man who stood up to the oppression he saw. He was freed himself from infanticide, who returned after being free and a wanted fugitive. He'd escaped the worship of Egyptian gods, freed from royal duties, and he was living a man's life with a wife and children. But he returned to where he was in danger of being killed himself, and then witnessed every plague God sent to free these people. So before I spend one more minute judging the Israelites or Moses, I will examine my heart to see where I can grow. Before I was born, God had a plan for me, and because I know He is good, I know I can trust Him. God is still working on me, and He's still working on you. He loves us, and He's freed us. Let us rejoice in the freedom while we wait to enter our own promised land. I love you, River Chase, and I hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye.